Broadcasting live worldwide. Welcome.
Are you ready? Welcome. Señoras y señores, welcome
a Diálogo con Luis Otero. So welcome to a new episode of the Dialogo with Luis Otero. This is your host, Luis Otero. Thank you so much for everyone that they're tuning in to this episode, and thank you so much for all your support. We're more than 100,000 listeners worldwide, and we would like to thank you. You know, I appreciate all the emails coming out of Guatemala, Mexico, United States, obviously, you know, where I'm based out of, Spain, Portugal, Grenada, Puerto Rico, and many other locations. So I want to say thank you so much to all of you guys for listening to the show. We have a tremendous episode, and before we go into it, just want to let you know, guys, please follow me on Instagram at Luis Otero, THE Luis Otero. We're over 99,000 followers, and we're growing. And as well, just listen to the episode in more than 27 platforms, including terrestrial radio, in a couple of the countries where we're distributed. But we're in Pandora, Amazon podcast, or Amazon Music platform. We're in all devices of Alexa worldwide, and Spotify and many more. So I appreciate so much you guys supporting. Today's been on my bucket list, I think, for over 10 years. My guest today, it's an incredible performer, incredible storyteller, incredible wrestler with a story and, a background that is completely, inspiring, but it's incredible what he have been able to accomplish in a career. I think that it's been more than 27 years in the wrestling business. This amazing guest is a former ECW champion. He's a former ECW tag team champion with the amazing Lance Storm. He's a 8-time WWE or WWF, whatever you want to call, hardcore champion. He have performed more than 1,000 wrestling matches and have many belts. He have traveled the world. I have with me today, and it's my pleasure to have with me today, the amazing, the one and only, I think the gut blood guy from ECW, the amazing, just incredible. Thank you so much for accepting my invite. Justin, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you in the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. The pleasure's all mine, and I'm happy to get to talk to all the fans from all over the world. That was an impressive number that you just gave out. So it's everywhere, all throughout Latin America, Europe, of course, America. It's very exciting, and thank you for having me.
It's a true honor. It's a true honor to have you. So many emails that we have received. I can not tell you how much. I told you it was 2,757 emails. It's impressive because we, from all the wrestlers that we interview and many celebrities from Hollywood and entrepreneurs and people that we have in the podcast, you're in the top of the list of that we had, because it's just impressive the amount of impact that you have made, not only with your wrestling career, obviously being part of the historically, ECW and being part of the WWE with your roles, but you really have been traveling the world. Bottom line, you travel the world, and it's impressive. Born in Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken, 1973, from Portuguese parents. How was your childhood? Justin, I know that coming from a Portuguese background, that really had some influence in your first character, and we're going to talk about it, in the podcast. But how was your childhood, in Waterbury, Connecticut, and how was that upbringing until when you fell in love with wrestling, and then everything changed?
Sure. My parents were immigrants, came to this country in 1970 from Portugal to Waterbury, Connecticut, and I was born here in 1973. I had a great childhood, man. My folks were a working class. Both mom and dad worked factory jobs, but me and my younger brother, we were, we lived a happy life. So that I could remember, we had a nice childhood, man. Just regular kids growing up in the 80s, and it wasn't until about, let's say, 1983 that I saw a match on Saturday mornings, and we still had, my mom and dad had the big color TV in the living room, and I finally got one in my room, but it was the old black and white with the rabbit ears. Sure. And I saw Hulk Hogan beat the Iron Sheik for the WWF world title. It was the first time Hulk was a champion there. And forget it, from that day on, I was just hooked on pro wrestling.
It's incredible because I know that chapter without the Iron Sheik will not be Hulk Hogan, and
Sure.
and without, I think that without Just Incredible will not be a Chris Jericho, because your second match after you decided to take that trip, that famous trip to Alberta, Canada, be part of the Hard Dungeon, and be put through that strict regime of like exercising, and not only that, but just getting those basics of wrestling. And obviously Hard Dungeon was very famous because they beat you up until they say, okay, you want to be a wrestler, perfect, you're gonna be a wrestler. And then your second match of your career was with Chris Jericho, if I'm not mistaken. This took place in June 11, 1992. At that time, it was a PJ Walker. We didn't know that Just Incredible was going to be this global sensation, but it was impressive that you obviously trained with those two guys, that they really were part so importantly of your career. And, you mentioned that day of the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan, but you were that to, Chris Jericho, because you and Lance Storm, you guys started together and build yourself up at the beginning, and then obviously you guys had your careers. But how that was that trip and that experience, and just to start your training, do what your parents said. Typically, hey, I want to have my kid to be a doctor or a lawyer. You became a wrestler,
right? I graduated high school in 1991. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life just yet. I knew I wanted to be a wrestler, but wrestling was a lot different than it is today. Back then, there was no internet. There was still a lot of kayfabe, and it was not very easy to find out about indie promotions, much less wrestling schools. Sure. So one day I was working at a grocery store, as a grocer, bagging groceries, that kind of stuff. And during my break, I went to the magazine aisle. This is back in the day when they still sold magazines. And there was a magazine called Pro Wrestling Illustrated, which I know they still sell, and I'm sure some of you fans know about it. But anyways, I was reading a copy, and all the way in the back, there was an advertisement for the Hart Brothers Pro Wrestling Camp. And I couldn't believe it. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that, as far as inviting me into, wow, you get to train to be a wrestler, because, I didn't have dirt sheets and stuff like that. It really wasn't as available as it is today. So I thought, wow, this is a real opportunity. So I took the magazine home. There was a number on the back. I called the number, and Bruce Hart answered the phone. And I was like, wow. I spoke to Bruce Hart for about an hour, and we set something up. I worked for about 8 months or so to save up the money. And the summer of 1991, the summer of 1992, about a year after I graduated high school, I went to Calgary to train to be a pro wrestler with the Hearts.
Wow, that's incredible. When you took that trip, they maybe have been a lot of emotions. Obviously, you put your hard-earned money and decided to just put that in your future, invest in yourself. How were those first 2 years? Because I typically find out that it's really grueling, it's tough. You got to cut your teeth in the business, and just to understand the business, because it's not, first thing is just to perform, but then you have to just manage yourself and your career. How was those 2 years? What really those days in Canada teach you to become the wrestler that you became, and you are today, with the experience of just Canada, then WWE, being hired as an enhancement talent, then full-time with Power Patterson, and then the rest is history, because that was the plug to just take you, to heights that, the world saw, and I saw very beautifully. Sure. But, how were those 2 years? They were really tough?
They were extremely tough. Okay. The training was tough. The actual training in the ring was very tough. They really brought you, they brought you into physical and mental exhaustion. I mean, you would do 500 squats in the middle of the ring, all kinds of push-ups, sit-ups. You'd have to jog or run, whichever one, for 2 miles at the end of each training camp. So I spent the entire summer. It was exactly 2 months, from all of July till the end of August, just pure training with the Hearts. And we started with 10 wrestlers, and at the end of the camp, we only were down to 2. Because people would stop coming or flat out quit, whatever, because it was very grueling and it wasn't for everyone. And that's when I always knew it was a serious business, and I knew certain little things. If somebody would sneak us one of the sheets and stuff, even back home when I was in school. But, you could read things in the newsletters, but to really experience them, and, it was something different. And Lance Storm he trained with the Hearts in 1990. So him and Jericho were there before, I'd say about a year and a half before me. So, so Lance was there every day. We trained Monday through Friday, and Jericho would show up once in a while. So I really got to learn more from Lance than Chris, but nonetheless, they were like rock stars to me, because at that time they were already going to Mexico to work, and to Japan and places like that. And I was like in awe. Chris had the long blonde hair, Lance had the short hair, but he had that little ponytail back in his Japan days. So they both looked amazing physically. So I looked up to them so much. And but anyways, so things were going great. I was one of the last two students at the Hearts. And September 1st, or the first week of September, I should say, I had to, camp was over. We were pro wrestlers. I exchanged my name with everyone up there. I'd gotten their numbers, etc. Kept in touch with a couple of people, and they're, through friends in Calgary and so forth that I, became friends with, started to say that they were going to start running a promotion called Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling in Calgary. And they were going to run it right across from where the Hearts used to run, and where the WWE runs, the Calgary Saddle Dome. Yeah. So I said, great, I'll go down there. So my mom let me borrow money for the plane ticket, and I could stay at one of the guys that helped run the camp and was helping run the promotion. He was an older gentleman by the name of Ed Langley. So I went down there in October, the first or second week of October. And, I was putting up the ring and, living, me and the kid that graduated from the Hearts, Brett Farrell, who wrestles in Toronto, Canada as Big Daddy Hammer. Yeah. Him and I were both from the camp, the only two that survived. We were staying at Ed Langley's house. He gave us separate rooms, so we could, we weren't making any money, literally any money at all. So it was very kind of him to kind of help us out in that way. So my actual first match was October 16th, 1992. It was my 19th birthday, where I got to wrestle in front of maybe 60, 70 people. The guy, Brett Farrell, Big Daddy Hammer, who came through camp with me, and in my first match, the day of my 19th birthday, yeah. And I went over that night, too. So it was my first victory, my first match in the ring in Calgary. Actually, Jericho was my second, like you talked about, and that was the following week, because we ran every Friday night. But that's how it started. And what really started to get difficult, because you asked me how were they, the first 2 weeks were great until the money ran out.
Correct.
Because I came to Calgary with just a little bit of money. My family, by no means rich, but or even well off. We were middle class people. Yeah. And so after the money was gone, I started to really have a hard time just eating. The guy I was staying with, Ed Langley, he kind of favored Brett a little more than he did me. So we'd have dinner, at night after he got home from work. But he always kind of made you feel like, well, you're not contributing, kind of like, what are you doing? So I try to do chores around the house and just, keep the place clean and what have you. But I felt strange about, eating for free and just eating other people's stuff. So I stayed there for 10 weeks in Calgary, and I went up there the first week of my first match. I was 220 pounds, gassed up to the gills, in great shape. When I left on week number 10, I was probably 180 pounds. Wow. Lost 40 pounds and starving, bro. Literally have to steal $1.50 in Canadian quarters that he had in his. He had a big thing of loose change that he kept in a jar somewhere, and I would take out $1.50 each night to buy a gallon of chocolate milk. And that would be kind of what I would eat for the entire day was a gallon of chocolate milk and whatever, once in a while, I would eat, with everybody, etc. But since I wasn't providing, I didn't feel really too welcome. And I don't really think I was. So anywho, I started to really kind of see how difficult this business was. We put the ring up, we took it down, didn't make any money, and it was rough. It was rough. A lot of lonely nights in a foreign country, in the middle of nowhere. So it was really scary.
No, I can imagine that have to make a mental and physical impact to you. Like you mentioned, you're losing so many pounds, but not only that, the fact that you're not with your family, that you're starting, to pay your, dues or,
your dues. Yeah. And you're
it's,
still a very young kid, you're a young man.
Definitely. So the mental strength and all those aspects they're extremely, important, and they had to be tough. That really have to put fire in your belly, because after that you decide to maybe leave that situation, and then you find yourself in 1994 after spending 2 years as an enhancement talent that had to be putting over other guys, and just basically going with the recommendations of your work in the Hearts Engine. You decide to leave the situation, enter the WWE or WWF that back then, that is basically the Major Leagues, and then you decide to, you're hired by, unfortunately, I think one of the best, or the first Intercontinental Champion that unfortunately is no longer with us. We lost him a few weeks ago, Mr. Pat Patterson. That whatever he is, we definitely. Well,
let me back you up real quick.
Sure.
There's a little bit of a story to that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. But I see where you're going with that. I left Calgary at the end of the year, around Christmas time in '92. So in January '93, I came home and I started to look for wrestlers around wrestling schools around my area,
Connecticut.
And there was in Connecticut, and there was a place about 20, 30 minutes from me where Paul Roma from WWE, WWF was working out there, and he had a little school. So I met this one kid, a gentleman named Tony DeVito, who actually ended up wrestling as an enhancement guy for WWF at the time, and also with me in ECW as one of the Baldies. But I got to meet him, and he was doing jobs for WWF at the time. And I was like, man, I really wish you could get me in there. And he's like, well, you got to know somebody. I can't do anything for you. So one day, out of nowhere, I went to a house show in Connecticut, and as the Hearts always told you, if you're going to visit at a show, bring your bag with your gear. So I just walked in there, man, like less than a year in the business, full of confidence. And I went there. It was Tony Gurria and Rene Goulet. They were producers / agents. And I introduced myself. I told them who I was and who had trained me. Tony kind of popped. He's like, oh, Brett and Owen were both there as well, although I had not met them at the time. So he's like, well, you could stay back here and I'll set you up. You can watch the show. I said, thank you, sir. That's very kind. So I watched the whole show, whatever. I didn't bother anybody, but stayed in the backstage area. And then at the end, I went to thank him very much for his hospitality. And he goes, where do you live? And I told him I live like 40 minutes from the office in Stamford to this day. Yeah. And I said, well, I live right here, sir, in Connecticut. And he goes, really? He goes, well, we're starting a brand new show called Monday Night Raw in Manhattan. Wow. And we're going to need enhancement talent. So would you like to come down? I said, oh, absolutely, sir. And I went down not the following week, a week or two later. And I ended up wrestling Lex Luger live on national television. Yeah.
That was
when he had the mirror. When he had the mirror, and he was the narcissist.
Oh yeah, I remember. Those days. That's incredible. January the 3rd, 1993. That's the day where in the Manhattan Center we saw the first time. You were wrestling as PJ Walker at that time.
PJ Walker, right.
PJ Walker at that time. And then after that, and nonstop.
And then that's where, that's where I started to wrestle more, almost for a full year as enhancement talent, right? And I started to kind of get a name for myself. Vince and I started to, have small conversations in the hallway. If you saw him at catering, you'd always make sure you go by and say hi to Vince. And one day, Tony Gurria was kind of like my main guy in WWE. or WWF, whichever one.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, PJ, we have a gig for you. He goes, Brian Lee and Undertaker are going to be at the office. Back then, there was no performance center.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're going to be at the office, and they need a guy to work with to kind of bump around for, because Brian Lee was getting ready to do the fake Undertaker in '94.
Yeah.
So I was just there to kind of work with Brian and Mark and, be their guy to bump around and work out with. So I do that. And at the end, we start Monday. At the end on Friday, we find out that there's a whole dress rehearsal. Mark there, the Undertaker, Brian Lee, who is the fake Taker, he's there all dressed up in the gimmick, paint, the makeup, whatever. He's all there dressed up, ready to go. And Vince and Pat come down. And now Vince is the boss. Mind you, it's very intimidating to be. There was 5 of us in a room. So anyways, he does the ring entrance, everything, just like this was real. At the end, everybody thanked everybody. Everybody's very happy. Everybody kind of is in the ring. I'm taking off my boots. They're talking to Vince and Pat. And then Pat kind of breaks away and comes up to me, starts asking me questions. And he goes, who trained you? I said, well, sir, the Hearts did. He goes, oh, very good, very good. How was it? Shit like that. And then after that, he goes, let me ask you, what nationality are you? And I said, I'm Portuguese, sir. And he turns around and goes to Vince, hey, Vince, this kid, he's Portuguese. And I'm like, okay. Didn't think nothing of it, but it was a little weird. And then a little bit longer, we keep talking, and he goes, do you speak Portuguese? And I said, yes, sir, I do. Because I actually, believe it or not, I learned how to speak Portuguese before I learned English, because my parents were immigrants,
Correct.
didn't know how to speak English that well. I learned how to speak English kind of in school, So he goes, hey, Vince, this kid knows how to speak Portuguese too. And Vince went, ha, very good. He does one of those things. Excuse me. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. That's odd. But either way, I didn't talk to Vince that day. I just shook his hand. He was very happy. He said, good job. Everybody, I said my goodbyes to Mark and Brian. And then Monday on Raw, I was on that Raw, and I worked with Brian Lee at his debut on Live Raw. Everything went fine, whatever. We keep going on, and one day I'm wrestling in, where was it? Lowell, Massachusetts. It's a small 2,500 seat war memorial, in Massachusetts. And Vince McMahon asks if I could have a word with him and step outside. Now that's if you know Vince and been around him, just in a one-on-one situation, he's a very big man, very scary man. Like he looks like a mob boss and kill you in 2 seconds.
Sure.
So he closes the door. We're literally sitting outside a balcony, looking up at the American flag, in the dark during a run, a taping or something. And he goes, PJ, World Wrestling Federation. You know what this reminds me of? I said, no, Vince. He goes, we're like the land of opportunity. We like to give pro wrestlers, young men and women, an opportunity. He goes, PJ, would you like an opportunity with the World Wrestling Federation? And I'm like, yes, sir, I would. And he goes, we'll get to you as soon as possible. A couple days later, I was at the office getting my contract, and the rest is history. I signed in August of 1994.
It's incredible.
Just to give you the proper timeline.
No, sure.
Yeah.
No, it's incredible because that's persistence. It's just a beautiful thing that I always talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and people, and that I discuss with even actors or directors or people that they're involved in many businesses, that
sure.
It's just, you take the risk. You said, you know what, I'm going to think outside the box. Right. I'm going to go to the arena. I'm going to introduce myself. And you know what, I'm going to go with the best confidence in the room and try to, do something for me. Yeah. And it's just basically, that's the whole thing about that is just great. And it gives you the first opportunity to join the company as a full-time talent, and they utilize, it's incredible, they utilize your Portuguese ancestry and your roots to create what was Aldo Montoya, that it was your first character. But that wasn't you, obviously, because that's not you. That's not Justin. That's not Peter Polacco. That's not PJ Polacco. It's just the character, and you took the
Right.
best, and you used the character the best that you can, and it took you, from 94 to 97, to be in WWE, and at that time there was. And there's a lot of things that happened because, you made only, you made several pay-per-views. You were a full-time talent with WWE. But what is interesting that you had so many, like more than 300 matches between those years. That's a lot of bumping. Yeah. That's a lot of bumping. Yeah. And just a lot of traveling.
We were on the road a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was the transition to be full time on the road, taking airplanes, staying on hotels, staying in shape, having that discipline? Yeah. How was that, transition? How do you adapt to those days? That had to be grueling. Obviously it's your passion. You don't feel it, but how was those days for you?
Well, let me tell you, man, as a young man, you're so happy. You're so grateful to be there. I was, and being so young, but not just young, but young in the business. I remember when one of the first, not the first, but one of the first road trips I was ever on was in Ohio. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I couldn't rent a car. I was 20 years old, and I was too young to rent a car. So we got to the airport, and the only people that were there were, because just so people that don't know, you basically at the beginning of the month at television tapings, you get a stack of airplane tickets and a folder, and the folder has the towns you're booked on and the dates, and then the tickets that go with them. How you get there from there is up to you. Rental cars, hotel rooms, that's all up to you. I've never done this stuff in my life. So I show up there, thinking somebody's going to give me a ride. I didn't know anybody really.
Sure.
So Tony Gurria, Rene Goulet, and Chief Jay Strongbow were there, and they said, well, you can come with us to the building. And I said, okay, great. That was the first night of the tour. So I get there, just a regular house show. It was one of the B towns, a smaller town. And Razor Ramon was headlining with Shawn Michaels. And, Scott was always friendly with younger talent. He always liked to hang out with the younger talent. I guess it made him feel, he kind of made him feel younger or whatever, Yeah. And I got there, and Scott's like, you're going to get heat riding with the office, kid. I'm driving by myself. Come with me. So from then on, I traveled with Razor everywhere I went for a good part of 2-3 years in the WWE. And through that, I ended up also driving a lot with Kevin Nash and, Hunter and, Shawn Michaels, 1, 2, 3 Kid, etc. I was actually, believe it or not, but you can see in the timelines, if you look, I was there a good year and a half before Hunter. Sure. Because I remember being there and Kevin saying, yeah, we're going to travel with this new kid from WCW, Paul Levesque. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, that's how it all kind of really started.
No, it's impressive because you are with all those amazing names, all those guys. You went to you went to training, but you were getting, college, university, like all that great knowledge of the business. These guys are smart. They've been in the business. So you were maybe picking their brains and absorbing, being a sponge, and I really, that said you to not only understand the psychology of like the politics behind doors and as well just to perform, because a lot of people, what they say, hey, why did you don't give the title? There's a lot of politics in this business. And what I say to people, unfortunately, politics get in the way of creativity and just sometimes delivering what we or some people or the fans want. So you have to be cognizant, and we have to understand that there's a lot of moving parts when we talk about, a storyline. So you were there 1994, 97, working with all these guys. And then there was a talent exchange. And obviously there's a relationship that was built, over the phone. And then it, grew between WWF and ECW. And I think that it was the best thing that happened to you and your career because you landed on the hands of Paul Heyman, and Paul and you had, I think, one of the best chemistries I have seen in so many years. I still think that, there's just only a few talent that have that kind of dynamic with Paul, like, Tommy Dreamer had it and a couple of other names too. But you took the company by storm. Like, Justin, you were booked, with Chris Candido, with, Mikey Whipcrap, great Sasuke. You were there with every single top player of the company. You become a worldwide sensation. Maybe social media was not then, but if social media was then, my Lord, you will have like millions and gazillions of followers if we're gonna measure that on social media. How was that transition? How was that communicated to you? They said, hey, we have this talent exchange. You're gonna be part of ECW. I think that it was a good message and a good situation where you said, you know what, this is gonna be fresh air. I'm gonna be able to just impact a product and be able to just creatively be more free than I am right now in WWE or WWF back then.
Well, what had happened there was I was starting to go into year 3 of Aldo. I was starting to get very good in the ring, as I thought I was, anyways. But the gimmick itself had worn itself out. And I knew Vince wasn't going to do anything with the Aldo character. So I called a meeting in Stamford with Vince and, in his office. And I went to Vince and I said, Vince, look, I've tried to communicate to the writers, to you personally. I said, I'm 23 years old. I've been here for 3 years. And he goes, I'm starting to really come into my own. He goes, if you don't have anything for me, please, I appreciate everything you've done for me. I'd like my release. And this was the time that Kevin and Scott jumped to WCW, probably 6 months before I went to Vince. And Vince goes, PJ goes, not a chance. He goes, I can't afford to lose another one of my guys. It's just a bad look for the company. It looked like everybody's going over there, and guys were going over there.
Of course.
And because Razor and Scott were like, or Razor and Kevin were like, yeah, we'll just come over. We'll get, we're in with Bischoff. We'll get you paid. I don't know what I would have been there. Obviously, I wouldn't have worn a mask, but they would, whatever. I don't know how it would have worked, but either way, Vince put the stop to it.
Sure.
And Vince then goes, well, what I can do for you is you stay under contract with us, and I'll send you over to Jerry Lawler's USWA in Memphis and work down there and learn how to work as a heel. Then we'll bring you back up as a heel to the WWF.
That's incredible.
And I said, okay, sounds good. I mean, what am I going to say? He's not going to release me anyways.
Yeah.
To go to WCW. So I go down there. And after I went down there, it was horrible. I wasn't really making any money. I was making $40 a night, losing money.
Wow.
And also though not learning very much. I wasn't making. I was already, this wasn't going to help me, and nobody there was trying to help you. I know Dwayne Johnson was there as well a couple times. We had traveled together down there in Memphis.
Sure.
He was also there coming up to go do the Rocky Maivia thing. Sure. But anyways, finally, the last show I did was in Memphis. It was a big blow-off. It was ECW versus USWA, and I jumped over to the ECW side for this night. So I was on the team with Candido, Sabu, Van Dam, and Dreamer and Sandman, something like that. Like all the players were there.
A blockbuster lineup with you included.
Right.
This is incredible. Yeah.
So I went to Candido because Candido was in the office, was in the ECW office at the time, and I said, Chris, this place is amazing. There were, Memphis was drawing maybe 200 fans on a Saturday night. The night with ECW, there was almost 2,000 fans there. So you can tell ECW was doing good business for the hardcore fans. So I said, dude, what do I got to do? He goes, let me talk to Paul. I'll have Paul go to Vince and see if he can get your contract, since Paul was working with Vince, like you were saying before, and we'll bring you up. After a couple of weeks, I was in ECW, and that's how it started.
No, it's incredible because you're there, with all these great guys, and you became the top villain of the whole entire promotion. And the impact that you had was, incredible. You had a bodyguard that was Nicole Bass.
Yes.
Typically sideways, like, oh yeah, there's a wrestler and there's the woman. You took this thing and took it creatively to another level. You had a female bodyguard. You had amazing matches with, a First Blood match that you defeated Tommy Dreamer in CyberSlam. That was a massive pay-per-view. I think that really cemented you because Tommy was the babyface and he always got beat up by everyone. And it took you to different levels, because then 1997, 1999 were rock star years for you, inside of the promotion. Then the Impact players, they get together 1999.
Yes.
And that had to be a very special chapter for you, because it's Lance Storm, because you guys grew up together and trained together and were brought up in the business together. And even though he was there 1 year before you in the hard dungeon, had to be special. That the Impact players had such an impact, because you guys projected and deliver stories. Like, I think it's been a while that I don't have seen a tag team to bring those stories to, like you guys did. How was that, that chapter of Just Incredible with the amazing Lance Storm? You guys, kill it big time. Yeah.
It was probably one of my favorite things I'd ever done in the business till then and now. Definitely top 5. We loved it. We were having fun out there. And I think that's what the fans really can tell. If you watch the pay-per-views and some of the TV matches, you could tell Lance and I were having fun. And what really made it work, of course, that Lance was my mentor coming from Calgary.
Sure.
And he also did the, I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, with that very dry, delivery he did. So we were both very happy. But what really, I think, made it work was he was everything I was not. He was technical. He was very strict and almost militaristic with the haircut, and and just very proper. And I was the badass with the jean short, ripped jean shorts and the ECW shirt and the kendo stick, and I would do the thing with the stick, and I would do a lot of hamming it up. So then I actually, if you remember the Impact player pose, I got Lance to do, because that was the old Diesel and Shawn Michaels thing, where I had the kendo stick. I stood behind Lance, and Lance posed like Lance Storm never did a pose before. I started to bring out the entertainment side in Lance, where he felt comfortable kind of doing some more stuff like that, because he hadn't done it before or since. Because then he went back to being very serious in WCW. But anyways, so we were just having a blast. And it was a great 2.5 years. It really was.
It was amazing, because you guys had the titles, it was an amazing run, it was a very cool blend that we don't have seen again in wrestling. You don't see a very serious character with a very rebel, I don't care character, like Just Incredible. Right. That I think that's why you connected so much with the fans and with the audience, because so many thousands of people can relate to you. They can be rebels in life, rebels against the politicians, rebels against their boss, rebels against whatever circumstances in life. That's why your character lives on, will live forever. And I can tell you this, maybe you have heard this from many people, but that's why it was so cool. The Impact players had such an impact, and brought, I think one of the coolest blends, because he was a technical, like you said, he dominated all the locks and everything. And you were like, hey, I'm a hardcore guy, or I'm a great wrestler, but I bring hardcore to the product. And that's what really ECW was known for. So you enhanced the product and brought so much value that is incredible. That really ECW World Tag Team Champions that you guys won. I think it was against, Jerry Lynn or Sabu. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was the Sandman, Sabu. It was one of those guys. It was Dreamer and Raven. Dreamer and Raven. I'm sorry. And those guys are incredible. The psychology that you guys, delivered, in those matches was incredible. I think it was, one of the most iconic, tag team, feuds in years. Yeah. How was it that the chemistry was notable? How was that with Dreamer and Raven? Because you have a tremendous relationship with Dreamer. He's such a brother to you. But how was that a special moments, and how you guys were creating that magic that still lasts to this day?
The one thing that I thought brought that together was one thing that ECW did for all that was we were allowed to create. Like, I had worked with Dreamer in a singles fashion where, I disturbed his grandfather's 10-bell salute, when he passed away. And that was Dreamer's idea, by the way. That wasn't mine. In Raven, I had worked with a million times. friends, all over the world. I worked with him actually in WWF when he was Johnny Polo managing the Quebecers.
Wow.
Little side note there. So we'd known each other and worked with each other. We all liked each other. So it was just fun. Like having fun, really having fun. And we were allowed to be creative. We were allowed to take chances with the characters, and that's what made it so fun and so loose. And I think when you allow wrestlers to work with one another and really just go about it the way you see it, I think that's what the big difference is today to the way wrestling is perceived and is written on television. I feel wrestling is so mechanical. Steve Austin, who I'm good friends with to this day, says it all the time about how it's you're not in the moment. You're being scripted. And JR said something recently like why the WWE's ratings are so down, and he simply said no one there is hot. Nobody has a hot string. I was undefeated for a good part of 6, 7, 8 months until Mikey Whipwreck beat me at the pay-per-view out of nowhere. So, and that's the thing in the WWF or WWE now, I'm sorry, it's like 50-50 booking. It's like one day Roman Reigns wins, the next day Drew McIntyre wins. And it's like nobody's hot. Nobody's like, you know what I mean? There's nobody dominant anymore. And I think the fans are just bored with it. And even though all their talents are very good, everyone is very intense and has a ton to offer, they're just being booked wrong. And that's a shame. But anyways, back to Raven and Dreamer. That's why it was so successful, and the Impact players were so succful is we had great dance partners.
No, definitely.
In Raven and Dreamer,
No, definitely. And you said something right. I can see it in the product, and unfortunately, I think that when you bring a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, I respect everyone's role in any single company, but when you bring someone that doesn't know the business, and yes, he's a writer and came out of an example, Stanford, film, college or film, school, and have that background, yes, but you gotta understand the product, the psychology, how the people think, work with the talent. Right. You cannot scripting can help anyone that is starting in the business. Sure. But when you're an experienced, professional like yourself, that you understand what really works and doesn't work, and you can experiment and move those emotions, I think that really that damages the entire purpose of just wrestling. Wrestling have to be a creatively free, art and sport that really needs to, bring the fans in. And you can push them out. And there's nobody hot, like you said. I think, and with all due respect to WWE and the workers and the great talent that they have, AEW is letting and bringing so many new faces, and he's letting the product just really worked by the wrestlers, even though they have some maybe, Tony Khan obviously have the final word, but he's just a fan. He's like, you know what? Push it, man. I want to see people here. I like the ratings, but not only that, I want to see the guys just have fun. And when you have fun, you create the best product. It's been proven.
Yeah. I've said this before, and Steve Austin, I was on the Steve Austin podcast a couple of years ago, and we talked about it. If he was not allowed to just go off and be himself and improvise and ad lib and try things out, Stone Cold would have never been born.
I agree.
You know what I mean? A lot of guys didn't want to put him over in that way, like almost look like a fool. And Austin actually gave me one of the biggest compliments in the world. And you can, and fans listening to this, you can go back to the first Steve Austin podcast I did with him and hear it. He said it himself out of his mouth. If it wasn't for working with you, because I worked with him a lot on the road, he goes, I would have never became Stone Cold. And the reason he said that was he would ask me, he goes, kid, do you mind if I make fun of the mask or the hood? Do you want me, do you mind if I do this? Do you mind if I do that? And I let him make a fool of me because, this way he could explore the Stone Cold character where a lot of guys wanted to look strong and Steve wasn't Stone Cold yet. So a lot of them were like, nah, man, screw that. So I allowed him to kind of explore those areas, which later on became, one of the most legendary characters of all time. But, Vince and the office and creative, they have to let these wrestlers go again and explore again, in their own hearts, their own characters.
I agree. And one of the things that I heard from Stone Cold Steve Austin, podcast that you guys had, he just said, and I remember exactly this episode, he said, Paul, he was out of work, and, after being in Memphis and being, working with the amazing Dutch Mantel, one of the greatest minds as well in the business. Yep. But Paul Heyman called him and said, come up to Philadelphia. And he said that it was a very long drive, obviously, to get to Philly from Texas. And then Paul, the famous words, he said, just speak. Do you, be you.
Right.
And that's what happened. He just started to record, and that's where in that hotel, those first snippets or, vignettes started. He came out and the Stunning Steve, character came to fruition. The same thing with you, man. He gave you freedom and you roll with it, and look what Just Incredible became. An icon of wrestling,
Yeah, he gave you the opportunity to explore and be yourself, somebody you're comfortable being.
No, definitely. And that's the awesome part. The ECW World Heavyweight Champion, what it represents to you, because you won that, title against Dreamer. And it was an amazing angle, SummerSlam, April 22, if I'm not mistaken. It was many years ago. But you won that title. You carried it for 162 days. Famously, it was, Dreamer and you, that you guys have such a bond. But how special was that moment? Because it doesn't matter what company you go, you get that title. They're putting a lot of trust in you. And they said, you know what, you're going to carry the company for this period of time, but you're going to be our guy.
Yeah, it was amazing. That night I went into the show about even into intermission after the show had started, and I did not know what I was doing that evening. Wow. I didn't get word till about 2 matches before my segment that was going to happen. So I had no idea. So it came out of, we had some controversy in ECW. Mike Awesome was leaving to go to WCW, and he had threatened to not drop the ECW title. And he had actually left the company, and somehow Paul negotiated that he would bring in Taz from WWE at the time to come in and drop the belt to Mike Awesome. So if you think about it, in Philadelphia for that SummerSlam, we had a WWE wrestler fighting a WCW wrestler for the ECW title. Could you imagine?
That's crazy, because it was controversial.
Yeah.
Awesome was a big guy. He really have made an appearance, I think, already, in WCW. Yeah. So it was a lot of controversy. Yeah. I remember after at that time, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Meltzer, all those guys that they already were ahead of their time, with the Wrestling Observer, they were already documenting all this stuff. And obviously us as fans, we were just being witness of maybe what we were seeing without knowing, obviously, the politics and everything behind it. But it had to be incredible, because they dropped, he drops the title to Taz, then Taz drop it to Dreamer, and then Dreamer drop it to the amazing Just Incredible. So how that moment happened, and what really means that title to you? You carry it once, but it was a very special run. It really was.
Yeah, it was a very special run. I got to live my dream. When you have a title, especially a world title, we were one of the major companies in the entire world.
Sure.
During probably the hottest period of pro wrestling ever. During the Monday Night Wars, etc. So I don't think of it as, I'm the champion. I didn't beat anybody for real. Sure. But what it does mean is, I'm that performer that Paul Heyman could rely on to close pay-per-views, to sell tickets, to sell pay-per-view. You know what I mean? He put a lot of pressure on me and on my shoulders. And he believed in me to carry the company at the time. And that's what it meant to me. It meant to me that I had arrived and I was one of the best of all time, or not of all time, one of the best in that era of that year. I remember they did a top 500 for the year of 2000, and I came in at number 6.
I remember.
I mean, that's pretty cool, and I get it. It comes from mark papers, and there's really no science to it, but perception of the wrestling fan. That's what the fans perceived. Like, I was right in there with Chris Jericho, The Rock, Stone Cold, Hogan, all those guys, and I beat a lot of those guys out. Hunter, I'd beaten out that year. So it just shows that I was right in the mix of something special, and I feel great about it. And it was an amazing time to be a wrestling fan and to be a wrestler.
No, it still is. I still watch so many tapes, and just remembering those days is still wonderful. Those matches they never gonna go away. They were too historical. Never. Justin, I know that. Obviously we know the story. Unfortunately, ECW had to fold. It was a lot of things obviously behind, the decision that was made. I know there had to be it really had to be very difficult for you and so many other people, other talents like Tommy and Raven and many, many other people that they were involved in the company, because it's a chapter of your life that you're like, what's going to happen next? But you were already so hot that you just really got that call, WWF, hey, we want you back here. We want you to be part, of the company again. And you go back to WWF, 2001, 2003. Were very good years, strong too. Worldwide, obviously exposure, putting you in the map, and obviously with different type of role, because it was, we saw you more produced by obviously WWF, but you were putting yourself out there, but you were not creatively, free as you were in ECW. How were those 2 to 3 years after in WWF, and how that really changed, you?
Here's what went down. I mean, I was scared because after the last ECW show, you got to remember WCW was going out of business.
Yes.
So now you not only have ECW going out of business, that employs probably 40 full-time wrestlers.
Correct.
Not to mention part-time wrestlers. And then you got WCW going out of business, who employ 150 full-time wrestlers under high-paying contracts. Those are probably, between both companies, those are 200 jobs in that industry that are no longer there. So we were, all of us, scared to death. So that means that, Vince is only going to be able to pick up 10, 15, 20 guys at the most.
Sure.
And, 150, 160 guys are going to be unemployed. That was scary. So I didn't wait for them to call me. Yeah. I emailed Jim Ross, because I had a good relationship with Ross, and I just came out of a main event spot headlining the past 2 or 3 ECW pay-per-views. I hit Jim Ross up, and he gave me a 3-year contract right on the spot, thank God. But a lot of my friends that waited, including Dreamer, he didn't get there right away, and a lot of Sabu, not till 2006. So a lot of people, more than that, Jerry Lynn didn't. Oh, he went, but he left right away. I'm just saying, a lot of people did not have jobs. So I went in to tag with X-Pac doing X Factor. Yeah. We loved doing that. But then the Alliance came in.
Sure.
And when the Alliance came in, it was, the best way I could explain it was there were too many wrestlers, too many fish in this small pond of WWE, and we all got caught, in this bad storyline. Lance Storm was there; they didn't know what to do with him. It just became, it was bad for us in that way that, even though we all had jobs, not all of us, a lot of us had jobs. Raven was there too; he was doing the hardcore title gimmick, but a lot of us were just turned into, middle card to bottom card guys, because there was just so much, you know what I mean? There's only so many spots on the top, and we were lucky just to have jobs. You know what I mean?
Correct. No, and it had to be very difficult, because I hear it from everyone. In many interviews, I'm like, it had to be difficult, not only just to push ideas through those doors behind, backstage, but man, I think that WWF had so much talent, but they didn't know how much to produce, how many shows. Do they had enough airtime? Yeah. So it had to be very tough, obviously, to be in that situation. Then, unfortunately, they decided in 2003 to, unfortunately release you with a lot of other ones that they were. Yeah. It had to be tough, and that's the time that you became. You said hey, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and I'm going to run my career myself. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to go to the indies and I'm going to just make an impact. And how was the transition from being with corporate in some kind of way?
Right.
Because it happened to me in many ways. You are with corporate and you're like, hey, I'm in the safe place and then I'm no longer here. So you become in a situation that you're like, how am I going to reprogram myself and how I'm going to take action to it? And at the beginning is scary, but then after that, when you're already putting yourself out there, you have a name, but you take the risk and you show up and you got all these promoters, out there, you start to see work coming in and you're like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this and run for the next few years. How was the transition to become now independent? It's like going back to square one. It had to be tough because you had to manage the payments. You have to manage the, traveling, the hotels, everything. And that's tough to make sure promoters in a business that unfortunately have so much, in some kind of way, bad reputation. They're great promoters out there. I don't want to say that in general, but he had to be tough. Guys. Yes, but he had to be very tough to, provide for your family.
It was, and I didn't know. I landed on my feet, but I didn't know if you really look at my career and how we spoke about this. I only did independence for a year and a half before I signed with WWE. Yeah. So I didn't know a lot of places or promoters. I was kind of lost. So I was starting all over again. The first thing I did after I got fired in 2003 was I went to All Japan Pro Wrestling. I did one of their legendary tag team tournaments and also did a pay-per-view for All Japan at the famous Tokyo Dome. And that was okay. And then TNA had started up, Jeff Jarrett or Jerry Jarrett, Jeff's dad at the time, started up TNA. And I did the early days of Ring of Honor, stuff like that. So it was okay, but the money was horrible. Comparatively speaking, I lost my house. And, stuff like that. So it was very trying times. I got a regular job, working, regular job just to try to make ends meet. So it was rough because when you're making, $250,000 a year and then all of a sudden you chop that more than half, more than that, it's rough. So it was a lot of adjusting.
No, definitely. You had to be adjusting, and I was in that situation many years ago. I was there. Very good job. Lost a job. They downsized company, and I'm like, what the heck I'm gonna do? Like, how I'm gonna make it happen? And that's the times that I had to just reinvent myself and say, you know what, I have to just create skill sets that I maybe don't have, and be able just to maybe change a career. And I did. Thankfully, after many years, it took time. But for you, it had to be tough. All Japan pays, Japan pays, but
they pay great. But it wasn't enough,
Correct. No, of course, and I think that, All Japan's still there, but now New Japan have taken over with the conglomerate behind them. So, they pay great, but you had to do tours of 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Then you're traveling from, the East Coast up north, and then to go to Japan, it's like 16 hours. Had to be really rough, and being on the road, So how mentally you were able to manage, all those changes and then land in just a small project on TV, Wrestling Society, and then you get rehired by WWE 2006 for a small time, but then after that you go back to the indies. It was something there because I saw you and I was like, oh my God, the guy is back. But what happened now? Why you taking Justin out of my eyes and my wrestling that I love, and I don't see him anymore. I had to just dig more to find you and your career, what you were doing.
Well, what happened was they did the first one night stand in 2005, which was a huge success. And they, about a year later, they signed us to contracts, whoever they wanted, the old ECW guys, to do ECW for Vince McMahon. And we did. And we went back there. I signed a contract. But when I signed the contract, it was for a lot a lot less.
I can imagine.
I mean, I know. Yeah. It was an embarrassment. I was making more in the real I was making double in the real ECW than I was making in Vince's ECW. And not only that, it wasn't about money. I get in there. The first match I have, I jobbed to Kurt Hennig. Second match I have, I put over a brand new debuting CM Punk. It was his first match ever in the WWE.
Correct.
So I put him, and I was happy to put Punk over, don't get me wrong, especially what he became. Then the next week, I have to put over Balls Mahoney, then Sabu. Then all of a sudden, I'm just a job guy. And I said, you know what? One day I went to go to the airport to go do my gig for WWE for fake ECW. And I go to put gas in the car, and my credit card got declined.
Wow. That had to be very tough.
Like,
wow.
Okay. And pay was really shitty at the time. And I was like, you know what? That's it. I was like, if I don't have enough money to get to the airport to go wrestle for the World Wrestling Entertainment, then you know what? And I'm killing my career and the name I made. I quit. I just no-showed. They called me up and said, look, we're more than welcome to come back the next weekend if you want to, blah, blah, blah. They sent me a ticket. I no-showed them again. I said, guys, I quit. And that was it.
Yeah,
that was it.
You have to sometimes, get to yourself, talk to yourself, do search, soul searching, and say, you know what, I bring value. Like I'm not wasting my life, my career, to just be, disrespected. Because one of the things that you have to understand, and people have to understand, and it's something that really, I mention all the time, is like, you have worth and you bring value to a product. What you have learned for so many years have a dollar value because you're impacting that company in a positive way or in a way that really you're worth. And putting people over, I understand they have a meaning inside of a business, but eventually it will devalue your stock. And then what's going to happen? Like if I'm going to go to the indies, I'm going to be the devalue guy,
Right. And then, like I said, I didn't mind putting over Kurt Angle.
Correct.
I didn't mind putting over CM Punk. But then it's every week. So there's a pattern going on. There's obviously no intention to do anything.
Or no trust, that they even have. It's just ridiculous.
I wasn't going to let that happen, And the money was bad. Hell, if the money was good, I wouldn't have minded so much, right? At least you're getting a payday. I was killing my career for zero money.
Yeah.
So, or real shitty money after expenses. So, no way.
Yeah.
So that was that.
No, definitely. After that, many years, you travel the world. Obviously, as an independent wrestler, 2015, you decide to, take a step back and say, I'm going to retire. I think that I have put my body through a lot, my family through a lot. And, you decided to step away from the ring. You're still involved in wrestling, but it had to, how was that emotion? It had to be a very emotional decision. Maybe you said, you know what?
Yeah. I mean, it was emotional. I wrestled Tommy Dreamer. I had a couple of retirement ones, but the one I remember most was the one I wrestled Tommy Dreamer at in Sayreville, New Jersey. But, it just didn't feel right for me. Something didn't feel right. I still felt, I guess, after I did it, and I didn't want to do it to retire, but I just felt there was nothing out there for me. Like the opportunity wasn't there, the money wasn't there, so why am I still doing it? But then as time went on, I just kept wanting to go on, and something just, like I said, I still wrestle today, but it's just a lot less, so to speak. So I'm more of a semi-retired wrestler, but so there's still something left in me that I would like to end on a really positive high note. Now that what is it? What does it look like? I don't know, but hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll find out.
No, definitely. And one of the things that I gotta mention is that you're a true example of overcoming a lot of obstacles in life. And they've been publicly out there, and we're not gonna mention them because I like to keep the podcast in a very positive note. But you being able to reconstruct, what
Sure.
PJ Polaco is, you're a family guy, you have beautiful kids, and you being able to rebuild a lot that what you lose when you're on the road so long.
Sure.
It is tough for a married man and a father to sacrifice a lot to be on the road and miss those moments. But you taking your life, owning it and being able to be an example of of how you have, overcome all these demons or obstacles. And now you are in a tremendous place. How do you feel now, and where you're at? Do you're happy? How do you're looking at life differently than what it was before? And, what you have learned, along this beautiful journey called life, as just incredible. But not only that, you're the human, PJ Polaco. What do you have learned in all these many years?
I look back at my career, and I'm very happy with it. I could have done many things along the way differently.
Sure.
I certainly, drugs and addiction were not a help in my life. But I learned from that, and it took many years, but, I think it made me a stronger person today. But I don't know, man. I just feel that this business taught me how to survive and how to appreciate what you have every day, because you never know when it's gone. That's true in life with friends and family, as we saw with John Huber, with friends in wrestling, and also your loved ones, your wife, your children, and your positions that sometimes you're blessed with and you take for granted. So, hopefully next year will be, after COVID, and hopefully COVID is going to get taken care of, under control, and a little better, where, we start to tour again and do some things. I don't know, but I just learned to just expand and to be positive and to, never give up, I guess.
No, definitely.
And where does Just Incredible go in the future? I don't know, but I know I'll be around for a little bit longer. That's for sure.
No, definitely. And you have a place in history that is extremely important. But, we got to recognize that you truly have, inspired many thousands. I can say millions of people that they have seen you. But,
thank you.
But the impact that you have made, obviously, just becoming a true example of like, hey, I'm going to overcome this, and just, having your family support and everything is extremely important. I think COVID really opened the eyes of, I think, the humanity in many places, but now to never take for granted anything, because one of the things that really, I really can say that, when this happened, seeing so many releases in WWE and just so many lives and so many families, and, I think the business have again changed in some way. And we hopefully, and you travel, in the pandemic. You were in Chicago, I think, or in Minnesota for a couple of signings.
I'll be in Michigan this weekend.
Yeah, you're gonna be, you're gonna be in Michigan. So you're traveling during the pandemic. So the world looks different out there, but we still all need entertainment. Without entertainment, we will not be able to freaking survive this kind of like lockdowns. That is just crazy. But I really hope the world is taken care of. Justin, just ending up, the interview. It's been an incredible, conversation. I hope that it's not the last one. But what you have learned, and how do you feel that people will remember you? How would you like people just to remember you as Justin Incredible, and just be, and everything that you have done, how you want the world to remember such a great wrestler, performer, but at the same time, great mind and great guy like yourself?
I just want people to remember me for being someone that loved this business, for being someone that was proud to represent pro wrestling, for someone who was, who loved his friends, who loved his fellow wrestler, who really gave it his all. There was not one night I went out there, especially for the major companies. Sometimes on the indies you might do a little less, but never did I not give 110%, whether I was hurt or sick or not. I would always give it my all, and just a very honest and good man, and would help anyone. That's what I hope to be remembered by. And a pretty goddamn good wrestler.
No, you really did. So many memories, and I know that there's still a lot of memories just to, to see with you. Talk to us about your projects. You have your podcast. I love your podcast. It's just incredible. Pro Wrestling, 101, if I'm not mistaken. It's an amazing podcast. you got that, and plus obviously you're traveling. Obviously you're going to be in Michigan this weekend. Talk to us about your project, social media, where people can find you. I really want to make sure that people know how to find you, because they email me for so long, thousands of people. I want them to follow you and be able to connect with you, and in such a special way too.
Sure. I got 3 podcasts I work on right now.
Awesome.
One, I do an ECW review show. We go back, my friend Alberto and I, we go back and review old ECW pay-per-views. You can go to Wrestling's Cool Podcast, Wrestling's Cool Podcast, or Wrestling'sCoolPodcast.com. Check that out. Also, myself and Vince Russo, we do an AEW review show that's on patreon.com/Russo TWC. That drops on Fridays. And of course, like you were mentioning, Pro Wrestling 101, which is also on the Russo brand. Myself and John Paz from Two Man Power Trip. We do a weekly thing about, just kind of little lessons of the basics of pro wrestling, kind of like what I've learned along the way from the Harts and Pat Patterson and all the greats that have helped me out throughout the years. And my social media, you can follow me on Twitter at PJ Polacco, also on Instagram at PJ Polacco. And I have a YouTube channel as well under the name Pro Wrestling 101. And of course, ProWrestlingTees.com/JustIncredible. Over 20 cool shirts, both retro and current. And also TheIndieConnect.com. I do what do you call them? Shout outs and cameo style things. So check that out. And man, that is it. That's a mouthful.
No, definitely. But it's awesome. How do podcasts, and obviously, and I ask this question because I support a lot of your podcasts, and obviously, do the podcasts really have helped you, explore maybe a different side of you, maybe an analytical standpoint, and obviously, it gets you out there. I think that really people like to listen to such a great mind in the business like yourself. It had to be a very good, maybe wait for you to stay connected and don't miss, the wrestling around these days, it helps a lot,
I love doing them. I love doing the podcast. Sometimes, it's a little overwhelming because I get, I got to watch so much wrestling. But at the end of the day, I'm very grateful. I love doing them, and hopefully, I could figure out how to stream on Twitch, and we'll get that going as well. But that's for the new year, hopefully.
No, definitely. Justin, this is your house. Just want to let you know, this is your house. We're extremely thankful.
Thank you, brother.
Very, very thankful for all your contributions. I know the world is very thankful for what you have contribute to the business, and I see it, and I respect you tremendously. Wanted to make sure that everyone follows you, in social media, but not only that, I want to thank you for just all those great moments. They live with us forever.
Thank you.
And they impact us in so many positive ways. If you were a villain, if you were a babyface, it doesn't matter, because the stories impact us, and we really felt more, we felt more in love with the business and the beauty of just putting a beautiful story out there in the front of like a live crowd. And you don't see that much these days, only in theater.
Right.
So I want to say thank you so much for your contributions. This is your house. You come here anytime that you want, and you promote all your stuff. And we will definitely would love to see you well. And we hope to see you for a long time. And blessings to you, your family, and everyone that are listening. Again, follow at PJ Polacco, Twitter, Instagram, all Pro Wrestling 101. The podcast with Vince Russo. Go to Vince Russo Brands, and you can find all the great podcasts where Just Incredible is. Justin, anything else that you would like to add before we go?
No, that's just it, guys. I just want to thank you for having me on the podcast. I had a great time talking to you, man. It was a pleasure. You're an awesome dude. I appreciate it so much.
Sure.
And thanks for all the fans, man, for sticking with me all these years. You guys have been wonderful. And drop me a line. I appreciate it.
No, definitely. And again, Justin, all the best. Hope that,
Thank you.
When this thing finishes, we can definitely see you in live events, live signings, and meet together in person. And again, everyone that are listening, please follow PJ Polacco on all social media as well as us, and we'll see you guys next time in Dialogo with Luis Otero.